Simon, thank you for joining me on the Social Buzz podcast. It's not very often we get an international best-selling author on here with us. It's a privilege to have you on. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, don't oversell it, but I'm very kind.
Well, no, look, it's a pleasure to have you on. And one of the reasons we wanted to get you on was, I think, look, we work in social media, you work in digital marketing, and I wanted to kind of really dive in and find out about your thoughts on what's been going on currently, where the opportunity are for businesses and on how they can survive. Because obviously, as you know, and I know the government are really, bar giving money out to anybody, actual guidance and support is what businesses need right now. And before we go into any of that, Simon, just for anybody watching who might not be familiar with you, just a bit of a background about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been in marketing for a long time now, since the 90s, in one form or another.
Wow.
I did marketing back in university in the 90s, and then came into it from there. So I guess I'm fortunate in the respect that for me the internet was really only taking off in a mass way as I was at university and leaving university. Always had a passion for technology and an interest in marketing. Those two things happily have collided quite nicely over the last 20 years. So, back in the 90s, it was I was interested in learning HTML and developing websites and that sort of thing. And then Google comes along, and how do we get to the top of that? And really interesting stuff right at the beginning, early days of SEO and then I was Google Ads when that launched. So I was in there right at the beginning as well. I think within the first couple of weeks of that launching, I was on there playing around with that. And then of course social media came along, so a lot of content strategy, and then of course all of the paid advertising that followed that. So my career started out as a pure marketeer and gradually moved very quickly, I suppose, actually towards digital marketing, which is where, as I say, my two passions collided. And then around 5 years or so ago, I wrote a book about digital marketing, which, as you say, very, very, very kindly, has thankfully gone on to do very well around the world. It's now used by the Chartered Institute of Marketing in the UK, a couple of hundred universities around the world in various languages. So, as a result, I end up working with and speaking to a lot of businesses across the world about the challenges they're facing and how they need to adapt their strategies. And this year's certainly been no different. It's been very, very interesting. Lots of interesting conversations. And so, I suppose my passion now is to continue to do that, both with businesses that are struggling and need help, but also with those people at the beginning of their career who are trying to find their feet as well. I'm always keen to try and help people through their studies and afterwards wherever I can.
You would have been involved when there used to be Flash websites.
Oh yeah, I've built some terrible Flash websites back in the day. Yeah,
we used to just crash, and I remember Apple said, "Right, Flash isn't going to work on our systems. We've had enough of it," and that was the end of Flash.
It was a great idea because the ability to, rather than have to hard code something, to be able to design something more graphically and then have it far more interesting and fluid, I suppose, in many ways. But it was really pre HTML5. And the code has moved on a long way since then, so there's no need for it. And as you say, really unstable and complicated and unnecessary. But it was a nice little phase to go through.
Just before we go into kind of the nitty gritty of it, I want to kind of really dive into what made you write a book, and what was the thinking process behind it. And
it's interesting. It was two things. It was one sort of accidental, and then followed quite quickly by something deliberate. So I wrote a little bit of a book called Understanding Digital Marketing, which is a fantastic book by a chap called Damian Ryan. He's an excellent author, has had a number of books out on various subjects. And he asked me to contribute through some of the we knew mutually to his book, and I read a little bit about how to convince your board to invest in digital marketing. I quite enjoyed it. I'd never really considered writing anything like a book before then. Obviously, blogs and papers and things, but never a full-on book. But it went down quite well with him and with the publishers. And then I just thought to myself, this is kind of interesting. And then he asked me to contribute to another book, Understanding Social Media. And then I thought, well, I'm writing all these things for books. Maybe I could actually write my own, right? Well, I mean, why not? So that was sort of the happy accident. And then in the thought, that sort of triggered a thought process of what is out there. And I think there are a lot of really good academic books out there on digital marketing. If you want something practical, you can pretty much Google it and find, how do I set up this paid search account, or, what are the key things I need to think about for SEO. You can get the headlines and practically how to do it. But what I found was that there wasn't really anything that was saying, if you're working in digital marketing, and at the time, lots of people were working in digital marketing, but didn't really have a traditional marketing background. So whilst they might understand paid search and SEO and social media, they wouldn't necessarily understand branding and press and PR and how you move all the different bits and pieces together. And marketing is an ecosystem, so you do need to understand all the different parts. So that was missing. There were also people in digital marketing who were from a tech background, so they got the tech side, but they didn't get perhaps the creative side. There were people who'd studied marketing, but they hadn't studied strategy. So how does marketing really fit into the strategy of a business as well? So there were, what I felt was missing is something that brings all that together and says, okay, yes, you need to be doing digital marketing, but what really is digital marketing and how does it fit into your business, whether you're B2B or B2C, whether you're a startup or a global corporate? How do you build a strategy that actually says, let me pull all these different bits and pieces together and fit it into what I need to achieve in my organization? So that was where the idea for the book came from. And then I tried to write it in a way that both works academically for courses, but also anyone in the field can just pick it up, no matter whether they're experienced or a beginner, and get something from it as well. And thankfully, I seem to have somehow miraculously got that right. So I don't know how, but more luck than judgment, I'm sure. But it's that was the purpose, really, to fill that gap of how do you just pull all this stuff together and create a really good, simple guide to creating a digital marketing strategy.
Well, look, it clearly worked. It clearly worked very well. And one of the reasons I wanted you on, Simon, was we've been, when we were researching, was we wanted somebody that understood digital marketing very well. And one thing I wanted to see what your opinion was on how you see digital marketing changing in 2021. What changes do you see coming in? What trends, especially with the current climate, do you see? And I had somebody on earlier who's saying, I see it going more towards social. Obviously, nobody knows the right answer. Just see what your opinion is on that, really.
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's a question that I often get asked in November, December of every year. So it's always a good one to think about and try and make some predictions and look back and see whether any of those came true. Obviously, the predictions that I made at the beginning of 2020 perhaps was slightly different to how the world turned out. Thankfully, thematically, they were about right, but obviously nowhere near did I predict what was going to happen this year. I don't think anyone did, unfortunately. Look, I think there are some interesting trends. I think what's really interesting is more of the same for next year. There's political trends as well as technology trends and business trends. So I'm expecting a recovery in the first half of next year. I don't think this time next year will be 100% back to normal, but I think by April, May next year we'll be pretty close to it. I'm sure there'll still be some level of social distancing and mask wearing in some situations, but I think probably with the vaccines coming out now and with some of the political changes going on, I would expect that we'll have enough coverage and safety in the world for people to feel comfortable traveling and going out. I don't think we'll have more lockdowns. I might be wrong, but that's the direction I think it's going in. So I think there's going to be some level of recovery between now and March, April time, which will get us back to a level of consumer confidence. I think that's an important part to set the scene. Then in terms of digital marketing, social media, I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear, I think remains absolutely central to. We
hope so.
Yes, it's not going anywhere for a while. What is interesting with social media is how it's going to change, right? I mean, we've obviously seen Instagram release Reels in competition to TikTok. I think that's very interesting. Met, I think, with some skepticism by some people because it's a bit of a copy. But let's face it, the social media channels copy each other all the time. Snapchat would certainly be looking at Instagram with the same message there as well. So that happens, and that's fine. Instagram is certainly very strong, and I see that Reels and that TikTok piece continuing, both of those quite strong next year. I think there's still a lot of people adopting TikTok at the moment as well. But I think brands using those channels to drive real loyalty, but also to drive conversion next year, I think is a good one. If you think back to the early days of people using Facebook advertising, yeah, and there was a lot of brand advertising to begin with, as people dipped their toes in the water and began to understand the metrics. And then that moved on to very conversion focused advertising. And I think I expect to see the same with TikTok and Reels as brands start to push a lot harder for conversion. Not that they're not at the moment, but I think a lot aren't. And I think a lot of people will open the door to those channels with conversion next year. I think people will need to bring social and search closer together, and it's something I often talk about. There's a lot more you can do with search if you're using structured data and snippets. A lot better than just trying to do the SEO piece. SEO is going to be vital. It's going to be critical, of course, next year. It always is. And you're keeping an eye on those updates and how those changes happen in SEO is going to be important. But I think integrating social and thinking about how your social media and your content strategy on social media is affecting your SEO strategy is something that people need to get a bit closer to, and also how they pull their social data into platforms as well. Marketing automation has grown obviously a lot over the last 5-10 years. And I think we're in a pretty sophisticated place now with the likes of Salesforce and HubSpot and various other platforms out there that do a cracking job. But I still don't think we're there with a lot of businesses pulling that data together and really, let's pull all that data we have from social media into our CRM, our marketing automation platform, and pull that together to understand what stories that's really telling us and how we should adapt our strategy accordingly. So I think there's a big piece there. I think a lot of companies actually sped up this year because obviously with the lockdowns, with consumer trends becoming much more digital than they have been previously, I think a lot of businesses sped up because they had to. And I think there are many digital transformation projects that would have been put off for another couple of years, or certainly moved a lot slower if we hadn't had the pandemic this year. So that's, if anything can have a silver lining, that's what this would be. And I remain very much reluctantly focused on the importance of influencers. I think they remain very, very central to success on social media as well. But I think what needs to happen with the use of influencers is how people select those influencers, right? I mean, obviously there have been some very famous stories about problems with influencers. But I think more importantly, it's not just a case of go out and find a celebrity and get them to endorse your product. It's very much about understanding who the individual influencers are that fit with your brand, and therefore starting to think about micro influencers and nano influencers, and having a range of influencers that you work with that are talking to a network of individuals who fit very well with your target market, rather than just blasting out to millions of people who are never going to care about you. So I think that use of more sophisticated relationships with influences is also going to be important next year. I mean, I could go on, but I think those are certainly some of the key trends.
You're 100% right. I think what you've said is very important. I think I totally agree with that, and I think a lot of the changes will be around digital. But the problem, what you get then, is if everybody's going on digital, the cost of ads start going up because it's an auction, and it'll be about who can find the most underpriced attention at the best price. Now, you've been in this. I got into digital marketing in 2010. I left uni at 2007 with a degree in offline marketing, and I had to just like yourself. Yeah, just like yourself, I have to learn about digital, and I started doing social. Now, there's a lot of skills in digital marketing. Somebody will be doing emails, somebody will be doing SEO, somebody will be doing web, somebody will be doing social. What skill do you see being the most in demand next year? Will it be content creators? Will it be video creators? Will it be social media? Or what 2-3 skills you think are going to be the top skills that are going to be in demand next year?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, actually, and it's a tough one to answer. I think there are 2 ways of looking at this. One is the storyteller. That's been one of the most important skills for, let's face it, thousands of years, right? That's not unique to digital, right? All the things that we know and we talk about and our cultures are based upon our stories ultimately, and it's the same today. It's the person that is most able to tell a compelling story that people can buy into and we need to be careful not to get back into politics here again. But those that can sell the story are those that are ultimately going to win the majority of the time. So therefore, someone who can create a really good, compelling content strategy, whether that is the written story, whether it's audio on podcasts, whether it's video, whether it's infographics design side of it, those people that can understand the individual, the human, and create a story, I think is the most powerful. I mean, I often say to people who ask me, what's it like in living through the digital age? I don't think we are living through the digital age. I think we're living through the human age. I think the digital marketing tools have enabled us as humans to connect with each other more than we ever have before. For good and for bad, but we're certainly more connected as a race of humans than we ever have been before. So I think that is. That is a sign that this is the human age, and therefore the people that understand humans and are able to motivate and excite humans, and therefore the psychology side of marketing, I think is really critical to success. And the second one is really the tech expert. And when I say the tech expert, it's the person who understands in real detail, how you set up your systems for most impact. Now, I don't mean to belittle anyone else. I'm not saying paid search isn't an important skill. It's absolutely critical. So is deep SEO knowledge. So is knowing how to run social media channels. All those things are deep expertise. But if you do that, if you have an ability to tell a story and you have the right platforms to manage all of your data and your systems together in one place, then you've got the foundations that everything else can build upon. So that's my view of the two critical things next year. But I wouldn't say anything isn't critical right now.
I personally think it'll be visual, so content visually, like video content creation. I think data will be very important. Not many people understand data very well.
Right.
Like Google Analytics, everybody can log into it, but how well can you understand it, and how well can you set up custom events, things like that is the important thing, because I think whoever masters the two will do really well. Because
I agree with you. I think that when I'm talking about the sort of technology foundation, I guess I'm including data within that.
Yeah,
data for me is the second most important asset that a company has after its people. So for me, the data piece is critical to success. And as you say, data is not the success in data is not about the data. It's about the insights you draw from the data. So being able to really understand and interpret that data and create usable actions off the back of it, that's how you're going to succeed. And as you say, that's definitely an important skill set, no question.
And especially social media platforms and Google search, how do you think they can deal with this fake news better? What could they do from your point of view?
Yeah, cool. There's a good one, right? It's difficult.
Well, it's $1 million. It's a $1 billion question. $1 billion question.
Yeah, I'd say if I answer this, I will be the next Bill Gates. So I think I think it's a very, very difficult one. And how do you define fake news? Because a lot of the time there is fake news, and then people will call the fake news, right? So where do you draw the line? But I think it's a very, very difficult one. There's a lot of gray areas in there, and that's why it's so tough. I mean, for example, if someone is giving out clear lies and disinformation, if someone is saying the world is flat, or I
won the election.
You said it, not me. But that sort of thing, right? Clear disinformation. Then I think that needs to be alerted. Now, the fact is, there's a lot of populism in the world today, and I say I have quite strong political opinions, and I don't want this to be a political interview.
No, feel free. Feel free.
Yeah, I got to be careful. But I think there's a lot of populism in the world, and the celebrity factor has grown and grown and grown over the last 100 years. It's got quite extreme, I think, in the last 20 years, especially. Where people are idolizing certain celebrities now, almost like cult leaders, where they will believe anything they say and
absolutely.
No need to back it up. Doesn't matter if it's clearly wrong. I will believe that person, and there's a lot of that going on all over the world. It's not unique to any specific
in all industries.
In all industries as well, yeah. And it's extremely dangerous thing, right? So with that happening, what do we do about that? Well, people are naturally therefore more likely to support those individuals than they are to support a person who says, I'm a scientist, or I'm an independent body that gives only factual information. Well, why do I care? I don't care about you. I'm interested in this guy. I love this guy. He's amazing. I love this woman. She's a brilliant celebrity. She's really cool. I'm going to trust her more than I trust you. And that makes no sense on the surface of it, but that's the way, you know, we work as people. We are mammals, and we look to the leader of the herd, right? And if there's someone there that's being exciting, and as we were talking about earlier, the good storyteller, right? Whether it's factual or not, the good storyteller we follow. So I think what the social media channels need to do is not try and check those facts themselves. I don't think a Twitter or a Facebook has the right to say, this person said this, and we, Facebook, say that is wrong. I think that's an extremely dangerous area to get into, because then, if we go by that judgment, then suddenly we have to start believing Facebook or Twitter, and why are they any more right than a Donald Trump or a Boris Johnson or anyone else around the world, right? So what we need is the social media channels to give as much weight to the independent organizations that are fact verifying as they do to the individuals. So if you mentioned Donald Trump, so if Donald Trump were putting out a point, then there should be an independent fact check. It shouldn't be Twitter fact checking it. There should be an independent fact check of, is that correct or is that not correct? And I think they're doing that to a certain degree already, and that's good. Facebook, not so much, and something they perhaps need to think a bit harder about. This mustn't be about monetization. It has to be about ethics at the end of the day. Otherwise, we'll destroy the whole industry, and then there's no money left anyway. So I think there's we need to get better at that independent fact checking. And if we're going to do it, we have to do it universally. We can't say we're going to fact check this tweet by this individual, but not that tweet by the same individual, or not this individual at all. We have to do it universally. And that's where it gets very difficult. You can't start just saying, I'm only going to fact check Donald Trump, or I'm only going to fact check presidential candidates. You can't do that. Or I'm only going to fact check Republicans or Democrats or politicians. You have to fact check everyone. And if you fact check everyone, where do you stop with the fact checking? Right? Where do you stop? Because people will give out opinions. You can't fact check billions of people across social media giving out opinions. And
Just
where do you draw the line? Yeah, but what's a big one, right? So you see, there's lots. Yeah, Trump is a big one, certainly. But there's a lot of grey areas.
I said anyone verified should be fact checked.
Okay, yeah. So that's a good. So you could do that. Anyone verified could be fact checked. But then where's the grey areas about what's a fact and what's not? There are some things that are debatable, so you can't therefore fact check them. But also the other point that's quite interesting on this one is that if someone says something that is wrong, what will often happen is that will spark a lot of argument and debate, right? And if that argument and debate happens, it's possible that people who believe the incorrect information to begin with are then educated by that argument and debate, and therefore their opinion turns towards the fact. So is it right to stop that debate? Because actually that debate might be helpful, or is it not? So that's where it's really difficult. I think it's very, very simple to say, just stop this stuff happening. But in reality, that might not be the best outcome. Usually debate and discussion, it helps educate people. So it is a difficult area, but my view is that the independent organizations that are speaking the facts and the science should be given equal prominence to the celebrities when a topic is being discussed. And I think that's where the social media channels need to look at how they can enforce that. Not easy. It's not easy.
It's not easy at all, and it is quite difficult. Maybe if they had a system of fact checking, and if somebody kept not lying blatantly, they penalize the account, maybe change the color of it or something. I don't know if you've seen the Food Hygiene Agency. What they do now is if they go into a local area and a big restaurant has got a 0 hygiene rating, when you type their name into Google, they do a PPC ad to show that this place has got a 0 hygiene rating. So it's quite interesting how they do that. So then other people think, oh, it's going to be embarrassing, we can't be doing that. So that might be a way.
I hadn't seen that. That's great.
Yeah,
That's
it's quite interesting to do that. The US elections have just gone. And an interesting fact I found out was that Joe Biden had spent around about $160 million on Google and social media, and which worked very well. And I think Trump's had a huge spend. I think every year the spend has increased, and the spend on traditional media is getting less and less. Do you think it'll just get to a point within by the next election where they just won't spend on traditional media whatsoever and it'll just be purely digital?
I don't think by the next election. I think we're going to continually, increasingly move in that direction. I don't think we're quite there yet. There are still, we have to recall, a lot of people who just are not using social media, and they will never use social media. And obviously, the trend generally with social media is younger. Now, it's not true that only young people use it by any stretch of the imagination. Of course, everybody does in terms of age ranges, but not every individual does. So there's still a lot of people out there. And if you think about America specifically, again, 320, 330 million people, whatever their population is these days, somewhere in that region. If just 5% of them don't use it, we're already talking about 15, 20 million people that they're not going to reach. So no, I don't think it's going to be entirely. I don't think it's going to be 100%, but I think we are talking certainly 80, 90% of the spend is going to be digital, and quite rightly so. There's a huge amount that's influenced by that, and a lot of that, when you do these campaigns on digital, get picked up by the offline, more traditional media as well. When there are interesting stories, it will go wider. But no, I think it absolutely has to be across the board. I mean, look, what was one of the biggest stories of Brexit, for example, right? It was the £350 million painted onto the side of a bus, right? So that went crazy on social media, but it started on a bus, right? And that's certainly not digital, not as far as I know, anyway. So I think the other channels absolutely play a part. You can get a lot of traction through PR, for example, and again that has a digital angle to it. But I guess where I'm going with this is that I try not, when I think about marketing these days, I try not to split digital and offline marketing too much, because the vast majority of marketing, pretty much all of it, has a digital angle to it. There's very, very little that doesn't, right? I mean, if you think about it, press, PR, TV, radio, whichever angle you can think of from an offline perspective, there's very, very little that doesn't have a digital angle to it. You might look at some outdoor advertising, some bus T-sides and things like that. There might be a few areas that you generally don't, but the vast majority of marketing has a digital angle to it. So will it all be digital? No, I don't think so. But I fully expect it to remain very heavily weighted that way.
It's a lot of money, isn't it? 160 million spent. It was the highest ever.
Yeah, it was. No, it's crazy. I mean, I think there was 1 month where the two of them combined spent 40 or 50 million in one single month. So it's huge. It's huge. And unfortunately, again, some of those messages that went out were not, let's face it, were not factually correct, right? So,
well, which brings me on to my next question nicely, which was like, do you think digital marketing and media was used to manipulate Brexit?
Yeah. So do I think digital marketing was used to manipulate Brexit? It's such a good question. I think
it was.
Well, I'm going to take a step back. I think that Brexit was manipulated. I'm personally, I'm not a fan of Brexit, and those that are fine. I don't want to get in any fights with anybody about it, but I'm not personally a fan of it. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned the bus. I mean, we know there was a lot of disinformation around Brexit, and things that have since proven not to be the case, that were certainly prominent in forcing through the decision of the vote, which of course was democratic. But if democracy is built on lies, then it's not really democratic. So for me, was digital marketing used to influence Brexit? Yes. However, only because the manipulation was done anyway. So if digital marketing hadn't existed, that manipulation would absolutely still have happened. As I said,
it was just a tool they used.
It was a tool they used to make sure that their manipulation got out to a wider audience. Is my view of it. So does digital marketing help enable that more? Yes, it does. Right, you can get out to a wider audience. There are things you can do and hide and target far more effectively through digital marketing than you might be able to offline. So certainly it would have made the ability to get that message out wider a lot easier for them. But it's not the digital marketing that was manipulative. It was the messaging in the first place.
And my last question is, I know you're quite active on Twitter and you use it quite often. Do you think a lot of these accounts that you see online, where you don't see a picture, there might be a picture of, somebody else or a famous person. How many of them do you think are bots and not actual,
Quite a lot. Quite a
yeah,
lot. Yeah, there's
I
quite a
think
few
so as well.
bots around. Are you reading one of my tweets about watch out for bots?
My researcher Hannah said it would be a good question to ask, and then when I had a look at it, I thought, yeah, because you mentioned it in your tweet, so
I did put a tweet out not too long ago saying just watch out for the bots out there, because there are a lot of them around. So yeah, it is concerning, the number of bots, and I think there are issues there. I mean, they're relatively easy to spot, and I think
what should somebody look out for?
Yeah, so I mean, you've mentioned some of them there, right? So I think with bots, look out for something that doesn't have a profile image is classic. Something that has a profile image that you've seen of somebody else somewhere else, and you can always do reverse image searches to see if that is a stock image or if it's somebody else as well. Those are key things to watch out for. I mean, you should watch out for, are they putting the same sort of messages out with the same sort of phrases and wording all the time? There are some individuals that do that, but also you can see, are they doing it at the same sort of time of day, or the same like always 2 minutes past the hour or something like that. Those sort of things are quite clear to see. Their profiles are usually very obviously patriotic.
My friend was telling me somebody did this test, somebody in AI, where they put in a piece of code as a tweet in a certain like code language, and all the bots replied to this tweet in that language.
Fantastic.
So you could see how many bots were out there.
Yeah.
And
yeah, there are certainly ways to do it like that. I mean, your average man on the street's not going to be putting AI tweets out, of course. But yeah, that's absolutely right. And also you should watch out for sock puppets as well. I think that's the other thing, is where there are accounts that are not bots, they are individuals, and they're saying they're Hannah from Georgia or something like that. And it's it's someone in Eastern Europe or Russia or somewhere else posting on behalf of them, pretending to be someone with a fake profile. So bots and sock puppets, I think they're both quite dangerous. Is relatively easy to spot them. I think the most important thing with social media overall is be skeptical, right? When you're on social media, just be skeptical. Don't believe everything you read. Don't believe everyone is who they say they are. They're most certainly not a lot of the time. So just make sure you've got your sensible hat on and form your own decisions, and listen to a variety of opinions, and also don't just flick down your timelines as well on social media. Have specific individuals that you follow and who they are, and then you can be influenced by those conversations. But if you just flick down your timeline, any old nonsense can come in from anyone. So just be a little bit cautious about what you believe in there.
And anyone watching, if they wanted to get hold of your book, connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can get hold of the book pretty much anywhere. Any bookstore. Amazon's a good one, of course. I think Jeff Bezos had a pretty good year, but if you want to give him some more money, I'm sure he won't mind. So yeah, that's always a good place. Amazon and all good bookstores around the world, really. If you want to connect with me, you can go to simonkingsnorth.com. I get a lot of messages through there. Try and get back to everyone I can. And of course, on all the social media channels and Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you'll find me everywhere. So can't get rid of me, I'm afraid.
Fabulous. Simon, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure. And hopefully when the lockdown's lifted, we could do this in person.
Love to. Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you so much for your time, Simon.
Thanks a lot. Cheers. You take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.